Today you will learn about let, var and const, and also the cases when you should use them. This is a beginner's guide, so I will explain the topic without going too deep. Let's start with var. This keyword is very similar to let, but it was introduced into JavaScript earlier than let, so you will see a lot of this word in legacy code. Legacy code means old code. For example, I have a variable my car with a value of Lamborghini, and I also log this variable to the console. And you see that we have a word Lamborghini in the console. I might easily change the keyword var to let, and if I save the file, you will not see any changes. We don't use var much because we have let, but if you look at some code on the internet, right now you know what means var. Up to this point, we used the keyword let to create our variables. Let keyword creates a variable that we can change. For example, I have a variable of favorite coffee with a value of espresso, and if someone asks me what is your favorite coffee, I might answer that my favorite coffee is espresso. But if someone asks me the same question after 5 years, I might prefer another type of coffee, and I might answer something like, my favorite coffee is latte. In this example, I changed our variable favorite coffee to a latte, and this is the reason why I use the keyword let. Const stands for constant. It creates constants that we can't change. For example, if someone asks me what the capital of Great Britain is, I answer London. After 5 years, I would probably still say London. And this is the reason why capital city is a constant in our code. Why we can't use let for constants? This is a great question, and let's look at an example. Imagine that you have a variable with a very simple name, something like x, and then you have a line where you do something with x and log the value to the console. So in our case, we know that this line should be equal to 100. Imagine that your code keeps growing, and between these lines, you have, for example, 1000 lines of codes, and it still works correctly. But now, after a week, you start to modify this code again, and you accidentally forgot that you had a name of x in your code. So you start to write a new section where you use the same name x with a value of 20. And then you log the result to the console. And if you save the file, you see that your newly created code works correctly. But then you notice that your previously created code doesn't work correctly. And it might be very difficult to find the mistake, especially if you're faced with this problem for the first time. But what happens if we use the keyword const instead of let? Now I deleted our newly created code, and instead of the keyword let, I use the keyword const. Now it works absolutely the same, but if I try to add the same code between these lines, where our x equal to 20, JavaScript immediately throws an error with a description that assignment to constant variable. So it means that we try to change the value of constant variable. And when we see this sort of error, we immediately understand that, okay, this variable was in my code and I should use another name for the newly created variable. The keyword const add an additional layer of security to your code. So the general rule that I was taught is to use const by default and to switch to let only if you know that you want to change the value of this variable. For example, I have a constant variable of favorite animal that equals to cat, and then I want to change this variable to something like dog. So we can't do it until I change the keyword const to the keyword let. And in this case, it's totally fine to change these keywords because we consciously decided that we want to reassign the value of favorite animal. At first, it might seem like a lot of additional work that you should do, but in the future, it will save you tons of time, especially when you start to work with more complex data types. I definitely recommend you to start a new routine when you use const by default instead of let. Now I hope that you understand the difference between var, let and const, and if you have any questions, leave a comment below. In the next several series, we continue to use the keyword let, but once we learn about arrays, we will switch to using const instead of let.